All right. So Shannon Algeo will be joining us here in a second. We're going to be continuing with the mental health awareness series. And yeah, I'm so glad that it's clear and that it's looking good. Wonderful. Thank you guys. Okay, thanks. So he'll be right in. Let me just grab him. Okay, here he is. Is a meditation teacher. He's a podcaster. He's got an amazing podcast called Soul Feed, and he's an author. Shannon, hello.
Hi.
Oh, you're so sweet. Those are my books.
I'm here with Ben's books. This one
Oh,
just came in the mail this week.
wow. You're like one of the very few people in the universe that has that book.
I know, and that's about to change.
Yep, that is about to change. Thank you. Yay. Okay, so is this clearer? Are we good?
Yeah, this looks great.
Okay, great. Okay, you look great still too. So, okay. So happy. Thanks for coming back, guys, and thanks for being patient, Shannon. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you, Ben. I've been looking forward to this since you invited me.
Yeah, me too. And we've got another thing coming up. We're going to be doing Soul Feed live
On Wednesday.
Yeah, this Wednesday is it 5 p.m. Pacific time? Is that it?
Yep, 5 p.m. Pacific. So I'm interviewing / hosting and co-facilitating with Ben for my podcast, which is a live community event on Zoom this Wednesday, and I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Soul Feed.
So Soul Feed is a podcast that is 5 years old. It turned 5 in March.
Wow, happy birthday.
I know. I have a 5-year-old baby. And I started it with a co-host who is no longer my co-host, the incredible Alex Kipp, without whose support and help and vision, Soulfeed wouldn't exist. It was our baby. And aw. And yeah, so I mean, I was like 27 or 28 or something like that. And like our first guests were like Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra and Sean Korn. And I was like, I had to spend time like kind of catching up with myself because I was just like dropped right into the bucket of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. So how was that? How was that for you to be able to talk with Deepak and talk with Marianne and everyone? Like, how was that experience for you?
It was incredibly enlightening. Well, for a couple of reasons. One, just like having a front row seat to the wisdom and getting to ask all of my questions to these people.
Mm-hmm.
I learned so much just like from being in that situation. But also it did a really big number on my ego. Because there was so much of me that didn't feel like I was at that level. Like I wanted to be at that level, but I didn't feel worthy to be. I both felt worthy because I was there, and I also didn't feel worthy at the same exact time. And so my nervous system had to recalibrate to understand that Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra, as brilliant as they are also human beings. Mm-hmm. And like we get to collaborate together, and there's no hierarchy of human. Mm-hmm. And that was like a really big lesson that I still am learning, but it's more integrated now than it was then. So when I interviewed Deepak, I was like waiting to interview him in person in New York City at his office. And I was like giddy and like sweating and like, but then as soon as you sit across from Deepak, you realize that like, he's not playing that ego game. He's like all about play and collaboration. At least that was my experience. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and then it just like was like, let's keep him going. And then now it's so interesting because after 5 years, it's like, okay, well, how do you take something that was instantly successful and birth it into a new model of success that's not just about numbers and big names, but about integrity and connection and meaning mm-hmm. and service. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what is up for me right now in this new season.
Okay, so when did you start doing the Soul Feed Live,
3 weeks ago.
and how's it going?
It's going really, really well. My new metric for success is, do I feel proud of myself? Like with submitting the final manuscript for my book, like it's
Mm-hmm.
successful because I'm mostly proud of it. Like I'm proud of like a very high percentage of it. Um, and with this with this Soul Feed Live and the Moment for Mental Health season that we're in, I just feel so nourished. I feel like I am getting a lot of energy from the sessions that we're doing. And that's a big sign to me that I'm on the right path, because there
Mhm.
had been some, I was trying to make the old model fit the new me, and it was sucking energy from me. And so I knew something
Mhm.
had to change, but I wasn't sure what for a while. And that can be a really like confusing state to be in.
Oh, you're so good. Well, it sounds like you're really connected to your intuition, and that you really pivot and adjust accordingly. Does that feel accurate?
Yeah, it does. And I feel like this COVID-19 quarantine, isolation, pandemic, like was like a jolt to the system a little bit, in like a wake up, like what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so it helped me get in touch with like, okay, what do I actually care about? Because something about this moment for me is like, cut the bullshit. There's no time for bullshit. Like, we don't know
Mm-hmm.
how long we have in life, no matter what time of life it is. So, what is most important right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been following like that kind of clarity.
Yeah, that resonates a lot for me too. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I felt that for a little while. There was something that really shifted when there was that collective surprise that Donald Trump was elected president, um, and so there was like that collective surprise and that
Mm-hmm.
reaction. And then for me, what was so jarring was that I had this idea that we were trying to like make the office of the president more serious and more dignified, that we were trying to become more civilized as a nation. So I'm not even talking politically, but what I did find was I mean I was really just disappointed in um like the kind of energy and the kind of talking and the harshness and stuff like that was coming from the president. So therefore it sort of like gave this unconscious permission for other people to be that way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was like a really interesting jar. Like it was like, and then some other interesting things were happening over the last few years. Um, you know, we were teaching meditation together. About 7 years ago, I opened a spiritual center. So there's like been a build up that I started to experience with like the kind of work that we're into, building and growing and becoming more mainstream, and people like Deepak Chopra and Marianne Williamson becoming like high demand celebrities, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and more and more people like the rise in Christian worship music and like the popularity of that, all of our classes getting bigger, and just sort of seeing all these different things. And then, of course, Marianne Williamson running for president.
That happened
Yeah, Marianne Williamson was on the debate stage with Bernie
multiple
Sanders.
times.
Yeah. Yeah, she was up there with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and that was like, to me, because we've been connected to her, I remember, I'll never forget the New Year's conference she did that we went to together.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
Yeah, that was so fun.
I'm just trying to silence my computer. That was so awesome. But Ben, I want to talk about something that you said, because I think it's like with that Donald Trump getting elected moment, with this global
Hmm.
pandemic moment, like there's
Hmm.
something
There's
about,
like all these big moves happening.
yeah, well, it's like what happens when the ground falls out from underneath us. Like the it was so interesting because I moved to LA in October of 2016. I moved into my apartment with my now ex on November 1st. On November 6th, Donald Trump got elected, or 7th. No, it was November 6th was my 2-year anniversary with my ex. And then like 2 days later, Donald Trump got elected. And then I turned 30 on November 13th. And so within like 2 weeks, my like Saturn returned, like the Donald Trump got elected, like all of this stuff happened. And I don't know, I feel like there's something so obviously devastating, but also really profound about those moments where the glass shatters or the ground falls out from underneath us, where like I remember like I was convinced Hillary Clinton was going to win, that there was no way that that man could be president. And I remember crying. I remember the feeling of slapping my hardwood floor the night of the election with my hands. I hit the floor so hard that I remember the stinging in my hands, and then I just started sobbing, like I was gripping to a reality that wasn't actually real. And those moments are so intense, but I feel like they are gateways into like new
100%.
moments of power and reckoning and healing. I mean, I don't want like to spiritualize things too quickly when there's suffering involved, like,
Right.
with this global pandemic. I'm just aware of like there's some people who rush to spiritualize the pandemic and be like, this is exactly what the world needs. But then it's like, my friend's dad just died. Like, it's hard to, I have to hold space for both. But it's so important, I think, to acknowledge both and acknowledge both the suffering and the opportunity simultaneously as the way towards the new earth, which I know you talk a lot about, like we're ushering in like the new consciousness.
Yeah, and I feel like these are initiations. They're collective initiations. When you know, you mentioned X, you know, when you go through a breakup, when you go through your first real breakup, it's like it's an initiation, you know, and everything changes, you know. It's like losing your virginity, everything changes. You learn to read, everything changes. You learn to drive, everything changes. You know, there are things that happen. Some of them are things that you learn, other things are things that happen, you know. And you know, no matter what your political stance is, Donald Trump being elected president was a really big deal. And actually, before that, we must remember we did elect our first non-white president, you know. So that was a big initiation also, for a nation, you know. And so there are these like collective initiations that we're going through, and they're all initiations in different ways, you know. And each one has its unique lesson or set of lessons, I guess, you know. And they leave like these imprints on us, and and I really am aware right now that we are in the midst of an initiation. Like the COVID-19 thing is like we're still in the middle of it. It's like a car accident in slow motion. It's like right now is when it's happening, you know.
Can you define like what you mean by initiation? I'm just curious, like how you frame that.
Well, I think that there's. Let me grab my charger. I think that there's a notion of what initiation means, and that is like we think of like a secret society where there's like people with like candles and hoods and stuff like that, and there's like a ceremonial ritual, and the thing is that is that's a kind of initiation, but the ceremonial aspect of initiation I think has been overemphasized, because an initiation is just an activation of everything that you've already learned. So it's a moment when things that you've already experienced must now be applied.
Mm.
And a new thing is starting. So like to initiate is to begin. So like there's a beginning of a new thing. And it's a new understanding.
So like one thing I've noticed is how necessary my yoga practice has been during this time. That like what was optional for me before has become like necessary for me now to as a and when I say yoga practice, for me, like that is a spiritual practice. For me in the morning. It's not about the physical like workout aspect of it. It's about the movement of energy so that I'm like purifying my vessel and not waking up with the fear of the consciousness of the world. Is like that is applying the yoga as a spiritual practice during this time in a new way. Is that like an initiation?
Yeah, I think so. I think you could say that. The way I would describe what you're saying is the pressure of what's happening is calling you to respond. And you are choosing to respond by changing the way you're doing your podcast, by deepening your yogic practice. You know, some people are choosing to respond by drinking a lot. You know,
I did buy beer, which is like a thing that I wouldn't normally do, but I was like, I would like to have a beer. And I mean, so it's like it's conscious, but it's just I watch it because I'm like, this is directly related to the quarantine.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm sober. I'm like being extra good, and yeah, like no sex, drugs, or rock and roll, no alcohol at all.
Where's the end button? Get me out of this room.
Well, I've just been really focusing on studying, and my practice is increasingly important to me also. And I felt really called. I even was feeling before the pandemic, you know, I was feeling, I was having visions of spending time with my nieces and nephews and seeing my parents. And I was in Costa Rica. I was planning on spending the summer in Costa Rica to finish my book, you know, which is due on Monday, my next one. And oh
my God. You're a book machine.
Right now, at least. We'll see how they all, you know, you can't just like do that forever. I mean, if they're not well received, I mean, you know, so we'll see. But yep, those two. That one comes out on Tuesday. Did you know that?
I knew that the pre-order was ending, so I wasn't sure exactly the launch date. Oh, how exciting! It comes out Tuesday, and we're doing our live interview on Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just saying that like the intensity of the moment. First of all, there are ancient prophecies that are being fulfilled right now. So there are all these prophecies that are about, hey, Donald, by the way, my level of productivity is available to you and everyone, okay? But it's because of things like no drinking, no drugs, no sex, no porn, no masturbating, clean diet. All those things come together. All those things come together to give me a lot of energy. And and it's also connected to a deep sense of purpose for me. None of these books are about nothing. They're all about a greater movement and a critical conversation. I don't know if you saw, I got a negative review on that book that I posted.
I read it. I read it from beginning to end, the negative review.
Okay, so in my opinion, that negative review brought up the exact reason why that book needs to be written.
Amazing. Yes. Well, the specific thing that I so disagree with, which I think I speak for us both, is that in order to be a child of God, you have to have like accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and be Christian.
Right.
versus the idea that like we are all children of God because God isn't like handpicking like you people are good and you people are bad.
Right, right. So yeah, that was a really important thing that I was very specific to include in the book, that everyone that lives is totally loved and is a
Mm,
child of God, and that is a teaching of Christ.
mm.
And let's get one thing straight: Christ was not a Christian, and the word Christian means follower of Christ. Okay, so there's a lot of content that uh, that what people who call themselves Christians are, and this is not just Christianity, it's all religions, you know, and there's all identities where hey, we're not handling it as good as we could, you know, we're not as clear or as pristine about our beliefs as we really could be, you know. And so the purpose of that book was to like reignite the connection to the spirit and the deeper truths in that space. So yeah, I was really excited to see the negative review today.
Well,
And
as our girl Marianne says, if you're always getting applause all the time, you're probably not doing it
well, yeah, I was like, that was like an initiation for me. I was like, wow, someone wrote a negative article about my book. Wow, because my first book, everyone was like, yay, learn to meditate. Yay, good. It's meditating is good. Yeah. Um, okay, so tell us about your book.
well, yeah, it's also interesting, like how like the idea of being inclusive of like of Christ consciousness being inclusive is so controversial, apparently.
Right. Yeah, and I didn't even use that phrase because I know that that's really bothersome for Christians, Christ consciousness. But the
Wow.
idea is we're supposed to be like Christ, and that's what Christ consciousness is. It's just we have a language barrier, and I also believe that the reason religious and spiritual practices change as humanity evolves is not because God changes, but our understanding changes. We evolve and become more refined.
Mm-hmm.
And we have plenty of dysfunction. Like, don't get me wrong, there's plenty that's not really like working. And, and we're, and that's part of the refinement process. We get better.
Can I ask you a question about the book, or is that should I save my
Go
questions
for
about the
it.
book
No,
for
go for it,
Tuesday?
please. Talk about my book.
Who did you write this book for?
I wrote that book for, well, there was a few different populations that came to mind. First of all, Marianne Williamson taught me something very special about the reconciliation with your childhood religion. And there are a lot of people who were raised Christian who throw the baby out with the bathwater and think because their Christian friends were judgmental or harsh or whatever, that Jesus doesn't love them, or that Jesus isn't cool, or that there's not something to be learned from Jesus or the Bible. And I wanted to create a tool, in part, a tool to support in the reconciliation with Christianity. The way the book really happened was Jesus came to me and said that his people were divided, and that they needed to be brought together. And the book's not in Spanish yet. And yes, I'm in a hotel room. Yeah, the book's not in Spanish yet, but yeah. But yeah, so the initial principle was that I wanted to create a book that was going to be just unusual enough to really open up a new possibility for a new kind of relationship with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
That was also going to be 100% Bible based, so no Buddha, nothing outside of that, in order to be compatible with traditional Christianity, so that it was safe. That's what the goal was, at least. And 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 I think that for the most part, the people that are finding it are that's the overwhelming response, is that it is helping people who were raised Christian, who are less interested in Jesus, more open.
I feel like that's me. I mean, I went to Catholic school for 10 years, and have both beautiful and also traumatizing stories to share from that experience. But one of the beautiful things was that's where I learned to pray and meditate. It wasn't called meditation, but we had time during the day where we all got to be quiet and we got to talk to God. And as a young person, that was very easy for me to do. It was much easier for me to talk to God than to talk to like the boys in my class who were calling me the F word and pushing me around in the bathroom, you know, like,
right.
In fact, those things I think strengthened my relationship with God. But Christ had like I haven't reclaimed Christ, because that word is so often, unfortunately, associated with bigotry, division, judgment, ironically, because that's like the opposite of what Jesus is all about.
That's not Jesus. No, dang it. That's sad. Yeah, that's I think that's really sad. I think that's really unfortunate, and that's not the teachings of Christ. And so for me, I love the Bhagavad Gita. I love the Mahabharata. I love the I Ching. I even love the Quran. And I love the Book of Mormon. That's probably my favorite one. The
musical?
What?
The musical?
I actually haven't seen the musical, no, but the actual text.
The actual book?
Yeah. And the thing with the Bible for me was that it is very mystical. And I found that it wasn't, people weren't relating to it like a mystical book.
Ben, are you there? Something's happening. Ben, are you there? Can you hear me? You've sort of frozen.
Okay, am I here?
Yes. Yeah, you froze and the words paused for like almost a minute or so.
Okay, yeah. And so can you hear me right now? Am I okay?
Yes. There's like a little delay, but it seems to be coming back.
Okay, well, maybe we should start to wrap up. Tell us about your book, and can you tell us the title?
I can.
Okay, what's the title of your new book?
It's called Trust Your Truth. Trust Your Truth. And the subtitle is Heal Self-Doubt, Awaken to Your Soul's Purpose, and Live Your Badass Life.
Oh, I love it. And when is that coming out?
So it comes out March 2021, beginning of next year. So we've got a ways to go before this is a thing that people can engage with,
Right.
other than hearing me talk about it. And yeah, it's a book about finding your personal truth and healing self-doubt, and looking at the reasons both internally and systemically why we are conditioned to doubt ourselves, why we betray ourselves, and what's actually possible when we honor ourselves. And so each chapter is in alignment with a chakra and explores healing. It's a lot of actually like healing trauma in order to reclaim power and live your life in alignment with your truth. And so the question is like, what's possible when we all actually know who we are and know how to honor ourselves? And like, what do we get to create as a collective world when we know ourselves that well?
Amazing. I love that. I cannot wait. 1 year, I filed it away. Okay, so everyone go follow Shannon Algeo. He's amazing. He's got a lot of different things. Stay tuned. Follow his feed. stalk his feed. He's got so much great content, lots and lots of beautiful, generous, inspirational content. And then we're going to be together on Wednesday. How can people join us on Wednesday?
Yeah, so there is a link. I'm going to type it right here. It's so if anyone wants to join for my live podcast with Ben on Wednesday, which is going to be a special gathering, it's soullumination.com/live. That's where you register to get the Zoom link if you want to join us. And it's the season's called A Moment for Mental Health. So Ben and I'm gonna be interviewing Ben, and we're gonna be co-facilitating a space where you can actually get mental health support and nourishment and tools during this time. You can also, people can share in the chat, and also we'll have a chance to have a couple people share audibly if they want their voices to be heard, which also means that their voices will be on the podcast. So I like to just say that in case people don't want their voices on the podcast, then it's best to not speak.
Well, cool. I'm super excited. And we've got your link. And I'll definitely make sure to be sharing that again as we get closer to Wednesday.
Yes, Ben, I'm so excited for our session together. And thank you for having me on this Instagram Live.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to see you. And I'm glad we got to hang out together.
I'm always grateful to hang out with you. I'm sending you so much love.
Lots of love. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. Bye, Shannon.